Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at Morphy's with a Boy Scout rifle. Literally, it's marked American Boy Scout. Now, in 1907, the concept of scouting was basically introduced to the public by Lieutenant General Baden-Powell, and it took off. It just exploded in popularity, and a whole smorgasbord of scouting organizations were set up. A lot of state and local organizations, and then a couple of larger national ones. You're probably familiar with Boy Scouts of America, which I think now is Scouting USA or Scouting America, something. At the time, they were the Boy Scouts of America, but there was also the American Boy Scouts, which was a completely separate organization, actually founded by William Randolph Hearst, of all people. And they would eventually get into some legal disputes over names, because who can possibly imagine getting those two names confused? Well, the two organizations were pretty similar. They were both fundamentally based on Baden-Powell's scouting concept, and they both did shooting. The Boy Scouts of America had a shooting merit badge, and the American Boy Scouts wanted to do something similar. But they specifically went a little bit farther. They wanted to have an official standard rifle for the organization. And so they reached out to a number of gun companies, Winchester, Remington, Stevens, looking for a Boy Scout target rifle. And they specifically did want something that would have military features to it, because this was intended not just for target shooting, but also for like military drill. And that's something that you see with Boy Scout style organizations across the planet, especially in the 1910s, 1920s. We've seen the Balila carbines from some of the youth groups in Italy. There was a militaristic side to a lot of these organizations. Soldiering was seen as one of the things that scouting would prepare you for. So they wanted a military pattern rifle, but small, 22 caliber, single shot, simple, good target rifle, all of those things. Well, Remington came back with the best proposal, and it was a version of their Model 4 Remington rolling block. The Model 4 had been introduced in 1890. It was the little small frame in 22 short and 22 long rifle, and I think 32 rim fire. Some of the smaller, low power calibers. And Remington came up with a system where they would give it the military style furniture, a bayonet, which I'm really disappointed isn't on this rifle. The bayonet logo's been removed, but I'll show you that. Now I've got some pictures. Sort of a vaguely military style sight. It's a very handy, very light rifle. It seemed like just the thing. So the American Boy Scouts officially adopted it in 1913. The plan was Remington would make this available without going through their normal distributor system. So normally Remington sells to distributors who then sell to retailers or to direct customer base. Well, for this deal, this was like the original group buy, because they anticipated the American Boy Scouts would be buying a whole bunch of the same gun. Remington would sell one directly to a Boy Scout for $5. This didn't last all that long before they got rid of the exclusivity of this deal and then put it into their catalog as well. But in the catalog, it was $8. Like $5 to a Boy Scout, $8 to anyone else in the general public. It's only lasted a year, but we'll get into that in a moment. First, let's go ahead and take a closer look at this, and let me show you what the American Boy Scouts wanted. Sorry for the interruption. Just want to say that today's video is brought to you by Headstamp Publishing, with an extensive catalog of books on all sorts of interesting and esoteric small arms, everything from World War II small arms to Imperial Japanese swords to the earliest of revolvers and Cold War battle rifles. There is something at Headstamp for every firearms enthusiast. Check it out. Links in the description text below. There you go. Right there. American Boy Scout. Notably not the Boy Scouts of America. Obviously a totally different group. There is nothing on the opposite side of the receiver. We've got a Remington mark on the tang. And then there are actually 3 different versions of these rifles with slightly different barrel markings. This one, again, is marked Remington on the barrel, and it is chambered for 22 short. Some of these are 22 short, some of them are 22 short and long rifle, and they will be so marked on the barrel. Got some patent dates, etc. out there as well. The rear sight on the Boy Scout and military models was a unique rear sight that Remington didn't use anywhere else. They originally had a little elevator slide that is missing from this example, and then that screw allows you to adjust the elevation to zero the gun, and you've got that little V-notch rear sight. This is like the miniature version, simplified miniature version of a military pattern rifle sight. And then the front sight was this little dovetail mounted buckhorn post. If we look under here, there is a threaded hole in the barrel. It does not go all the way through into the bore, of course. That is where the bayonet lug was attached, and it was basically just a conical round screw that would lock into the back of a little miniature 6.5-inch long bayonet, which would be super cool to show you. I'm kind of sad that this one doesn't have that. It is also missing the front sling swivel, which was a stacking swivel. Again, this is intended for military drill practice sorts of use, and not that uncommon to have them missing. The barrel band, again, military pattern. You know, they really did replicate like a miniature army rifle sort of deal here. And the overall pattern of the furniture is what would be described at the time as musket style, which is to say it has a full-length lower handguard and a separate upper handguard. In military use on real military rifles, this upper handguard allows the gun to get a bit hot and the user be protected should they be holding the gun like this for bayonet drill. Functionally, this is very simple. It's just a Remington rolling block, so you have to manually cock the hammer, then you can open the action. There's a little spring-loaded ejector there that will pop out an empty case, manually fit one round in there, close the rolling block, the whole rifle is named after, and when you pull the trigger, drops the hammer. This, the block of the hammer acts to lock the breech block shut by engaging in the round part of the breech block down here inside the receiver. Very simple. Now, one kind of sneaky feature to these rifles, they were advertised as being solid frame guns. They are, in fact, all takedown rifles. So there's a screw here, and it is left-hand thread. A lot of these are messed up from people trying really hard to unscrew them the wrong direction. But that's a left-hand thread screw, and if you take it out, there we go, pop that out, and then the barrel comes right off. You can see that half circle right there. That's where that guy sits and locks the barrel in place. So this is all of the Boy Scout models. They would go on to rename this the military model. I think this applies to the military models as well, but I'm honestly not sure. I haven't gotten my hands on one of those yet. So putting it back together is very simple. Just slide those guys back in and put the screw back in. Remember again, left-hand threaded screw. As an organization, the American Boy Scouts ended up having a lot of trouble. They never had nearly as much membership as the Boy Scouts of America. Their legal battles with the Boy Scouts of America over confusing naming back and forth ended up in favor of the Boy Scouts of America, and by the early 1920s, the American Boy Scouts was defunct as an organization. I don't think they actually ordered as many of these rifles as Remington anticipated. Total production is estimated to be not more than 1,500 of the guns. And so in 1914, Remington essentially kept the exact same gun, but they renamed it the military model instead of the Boy Scout model, and put it in their catalog and sold it to anybody. And they actually left it in the catalog for a while. They ended up making 13,000, an estimated 13,500 of the military model, this, but with a different marking on it, essentially, as a way to kind of get out from the Boy Scout exclusivity deal that probably hadn't worked out the way they really wanted it to. Now, the other thing that was going on at this point is there's actually a fair amount of popular controversy over the use of shooting sports with Boy Scouts. There had been two well-publicized firearms accidents in which boys were shot at scouting events. I think they were both American Boy Scout events, although I don't remember exactly. One of them might have been a Boy Scouts of America event. But the Boy Scouts of America were shying away from shooting. They never completely got rid of their shooting merit badge, and they did bring it back a few years later when everything had kind of quieted down, or they started promoting it more after things quieted down. But at the time that the American Boy Scouts were adopting this, the Boy Scouts of America very deliberately opted to not have an official rifle and kind of downplayed all of their shooting element, the shooting related things in their scouting curriculum. So for Remington, I'm sure this didn't quite turn out the way they wanted. Although the number 4, the small frame, little dinky Remington rolling block action, was overall a fantastic success for Remington. They introduced it in 1890. They didn't discontinue it until 1932, having made 350,000 of the things. Now, as far as the Boy Scouts are concerned, once you get past World War I, of course, World War I throws a lot of firearms production on its head. Once you get after World War I, sales of something like this to the Boy Scouts really started to slow down because the availability of bolt-action rifles that had better capability, they were more modern at that point, just as accurate, and they were being able to be made cheaper and simpler than rolling blocks, which seems like a bit of a stretch. Rolling blocks are not a particularly complicated firearm, but again, neither are .22 caliber bolt-action rifles. So this sort of style fell out of favor. Bolt actions took over in its place, and these sort of withered away. Today, there's probably maybe a 20-25% survival rate of the original guns. They're out there, but they're pretty rare. Having them missing the stacking swivel and the bayonet lug is unfortunately relatively common, and the bayonets are actually significantly scarcer than the guns. The theory I've seen online, which makes a lot of sense, is that there were an awful lot of mothers of 12-year-old boys who saw their kid come in the door with a rifle with a little miniature bayonet on it and went, "Oh, we don't need him running around with a pointy thing on the end of that gun. We'll put that away over here for safekeeping," and over here meant never to be seen again. Thank you very much. Probably a significant element of truth to that theory. So if you ever see one of the bayonets for these, you'll know what you're looking at. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Big thanks to Morpheus for giving me access to this one to show to you guys. Thanks for watching.